Morning, folks. Today we're going to finish our discussion of Chapter 6 and start talking about Chapter 7. Morning, Charlie. Alright, so we had been talking about the box model, normal flow. I feel like Chapter 6 has a mountain of stuff in it, so we barely made it through. But last time we were working on setting up a page with multiple columns, and let me see where we were on that. Nope, that's not it. Oh well. We'll go through this. We're still going to talk about it, but we'll do so in kind of a more concise way this time. Okay. So here we're formally introducing the CSS Display property, and by default, an element will either be display block or display inline. And you can see there are lists here. These elements have the default display of block. So these are all things we've used before. Paragraph, line item, div, an image, line break, H1, and then, so we know those take up their own space on the page within their container. And these elements that are inline, so we've seen span, what is A? That's for hyperlinks, right? That's the anchor tag. B, that is for bold, and strong also does bold. So you can change the display of an element, and I think we've done that before I've shown that before in the class. So let's see if I have that box model example. Three weeks ago. Has it really been that long? No. I need to be better about putting these in the folders. Alright, well, it doesn't really matter. We can really use any example here, if I can find one. Chapter 8. that's from a different class. Too many classes use the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Here we go. This might be the one I was looking for in the first place. All right, it's kind of a mess. Let's go ahead and just get rid of the CSS here. Go ahead and copy it. All right, so it looks like this. So, what do you think will happen if I change H2s? Or first of all, what do you think the default display property is of H2s and H1s? What do you guys think? I think it's block or inline. So it's block, and so you can see each item is, or each element is on its own, has its own space on the page. Let's try changing one. Let's change H2 to display inline. So what do you think that'll do? Alright, so now the H2s are not on their own line. They can be on the same line. Okay. H1s are still block elements, so they're each on their own line. And you may say, okay, we've talked about this quite a bit from the beginning. Why are we talking about it now? Well, it's because of this right here. DisplayNone. So besides block and inline, you can set it to DisplayNone. And what do you think that'll do? Where do those H2s go? So using DisplayNone, you can actually hide elements on the page. And you might say, well, what's the point of that? Why even put it there if you're just going to hide it? Well, if you have a way to change that property, you can turn it on and off. Okay, so let's try, let's see. We have it set to display none. One way you could do that is by using some JavaScript. And we'll see if I can remember the syntax for this. Let's see. So here we have this div with these three H1s in it, and it's called, or the class is first D. I'm going to give it an ID of panel. And remember, I'm just choosing a name. It doesn't matter what you call it. You just need to call it something that you can recognize. Okay, so in here, don't worry about the JavaScript syntax or anything. I just want to show you that you can use the display none to kind of create something that you may not have considered. I'll have to look at the syntax. Document dot element by ID style. So this is what we would learn about in Web Scripting 1. Style.property equals, okay. All right. Okay. And let's see. Whoops. It's get element by ID. There we go. Okay, so now that's gone. And so we could add a button. So that when we click the button, it'll run this code. Okay. And what did I forget? Oh, I always do this. Morning, Joey. So there is no, as far as I'm aware, yeah, thank you, Charlie. And I've made this mistake before. I think my fingers just, I'm trying not to punch the keyboard too hard. I'm moving too fast. Okay. There is no on lick. Do not lick the screen to try to activate or trigger that event. Okay. So now, when you click this, you can hide it. And then maybe you want to be able to show it again. You can make a separate button for that. Okay. So now I can, whoops, that's confusing. So now I can hide the panel and show the panel. So this is one way you might use the DisplayNone. Well, I am using a touchpad. I haven't tested whether it works with the tongue, but okay. All of that just to talk about why we're talking about the display property again. Even though it's only formally introduced now, it's so important to everything we've been doing. Why are there double quotes around that? Okay, anyway. That's all I wanted to say about that for now. And so part of this chapter is, you know, we want to graduate from creating a left-aligned web page with a single column to maybe a page with multiple columns or multiple sections, right? So here's what we had before. Here's what we want to be able to do. And so here is some example code for setting up a page with 2 columns, a wrapper that centers the page, and what else? Well, let's try it and then I'll go through it a bit. So I'm going to keep this actually, not throw me away. It will be display none hide button. I'll go ahead and give you guys this link too in case you want to mess around. But again, you're not expected to use JavaScript at this point in the class. It's just something for you to, if you're interested, look ahead at. If you are planning on taking Web Scripting 1 next semester, we will be going over that stuff. So you can prepare, or you can be excited about what we're going to learn. Okay, so let's create another page here. And this will be regarding 2 columns. Okay, I'll go ahead and give you the link to this too. Okay, so they gave us the CSS. So I'll throw that in here. Oops. That's what I get for trying to do things out of order. And yeah, I'll just keep it as embedded because I want to be able to look at it with you, you know, here on the same page. But normally you would put that in the external. There we go. Don't forget the auto format option, so you don't have to manually adjust the spacing or the indents. Okay, and then the previous slide has the HTML. Do be careful when copying code out of Word or PowerPoint or any Microsoft Office product, because it includes characters that aren't recognized by, you know, the browser, how it interprets HTML and other, you know, we're only using HTML and CSS in this class, but it's something that you should be wary of. The biggest issue with that is PowerPoint or Microsoft Office, any Office thing, when you put a double quote, it actually puts it as a left-facing and right-facing double quote, but the text editor needs neutral alignment double quotes to work. So if someone just typed the code in here, like whoever the intern is at the book publisher company that they rely on to create the slides, just types this out, they may not even have any idea what HTML and CSS are, and so why would they care? It's not like anyone's testing the material before it's released, right? It's not like it costs a lot of money to buy a book like that and with the resources. Anyway, if you do that, you will have to make sure to go in and manually change those double quotes to the neutral ones by simply deleting them and replacing them, which is really annoying, so just be wary of it. What's more annoying is not understanding why your code isn't working due to an issue that you would never encounter normally. Alright, so what do we have here? Something's wrong. It looks like they did not give me any of the content. Header nav main footer div. So the div is wrapper. We have that. They don't have a body background color here, so let's set that. So there we go. So here's our nav, here's our content area. Since there's nothing in the header or footer, those are empty. So let's just put some text in there. See what it looks like. All right. So if I want to add anything into this left column, where do I need to put that? And if I want to add anything into the content section here, where would I do that? If I want to add stuff to the header, the footer, you can see At this point, I've just formed the layout of the page here for a 2-column page. Okay. We'll go and label these. So this is header, nav, and I'm going to take the spaces out between them because you shouldn't be putting anything between these. Remember, when we first started and we talked about what the head section is on the page and what the body section is, anytime you're going to be adding something to the page that's going to show up actually in the page, that needs to go in the body, right? And now we're further dividing it up into this wrapper. That's this open and close div here. That's this section that's not chartreuse. We don't want anything outside of that. Or if we do, we have to put it outside of there. But the way we've set it up, we really don't want anything out of there. So basically everything above this, we're not going to add anything. And everything below this, we're not going to add anything. So we're only working in here now. And we shouldn't put anything above the header, between the header and nav. Does that make sense? Between the nav and main. These are now our sections that we can work with. So we've further divided it down. So let's see where these are showing up on the page, just in case that's not clear. All right, and let's go ahead and just add, just for fun, we'll go ahead and add an image into each one. There we go. Oh, and you don't need 2 body tags. I must have copied that without realizing it. All right. So we'll have to get some images in here. Let's use this one, this one, this one, and this one. Just random, I'm not choosing these in any order. Oh, I can't use a web P, so let's just get rid of that one. And what type of, oh, it's a PNG. We can use that. So just randomly, I've selected the 3 file types that we've talked about, a JPEG, a GIF file, and a PNG file. I'm going to change the name of this because it's too long. There we go. And this name isn't very good because I don't know what it is, so I'll go landscape. Alright, so we'll just throw an image in the header here. And we'll put Corny up there because he's kind of tiny and we don't want the header too big. And then in the navigation, let's put the icon. And while I'm putting these in, why don't you guys tell me, why am I putting the alt text here? Why would I put that? What's it for? Just put Corny again down here in the bottom. Oops, did I type the name wrong? Landscape. Oh, it's a JPEG. My bad. Okay, so we got some issues here. Right, Charlie, you got one reason why. If someone's using a browser that can't load images, it will put the alt text there, so at least they have some sort of an idea. There is another reason why you want to put alt text, and it's actually the same reason. So, you know, when you imagine browsers that don't load images, you're probably thinking, well, I always used to think old browsers, so like someone who still is using a flip phone, or I don't even know, a Palm Pilot, something that doesn't show anything but text. But, you know, who's using that? That's not a big group of people, but if you think about it, you know, if people who can't see very well or even blind want to browse the internet, they use a browser called a screen reader, and that will, obviously they can't, it's not going to be able to display the pictures, but it will at least be able to read the description to them. If you don't do that, some of the screen readers will just say, you know, it'll read the page, it'll say header, picture, nav, picture, main, picture. And I got to imagine, if you can't see, hearing it tell you that there's a picture on the page isn't all that useful. So it's also for accessibility. Okay. So, you know, this did not work out that well because the image is not, it's too wide. And so I think we can just set this one. There's a few different things we can do, but we'll just set it manually. Let's make sure. So I'm hoping this will be 100% of the container. Yeah, there we go. So I set the width to 100%. It interprets that as make the picture 100% of the width of the container, and then it'll keep the aspect ratio by adjusting the height accordingly. And so now I'm trying to think, so why did it make the image this, how did it decide to make the image this big? Because as I am adjusting the page, it's growing and shrinking. Okay. And so there's space on the left and the right of the page that's being taken up by this right here. Everything in the middle here is in the wrapper, and we're saying the wrapper only fits, we only want it to fit in 80% of the container, which the body is the container above that. So it's 80%, it's in the middle, which leaves 10% on the left and the right. And so what the image is doing is it's taking 80% of this main section, which we've set up as taking up, now how is it deciding how wide to make that? We're giving the nav 90 pixels of width, and we're giving the main, letting it just size itself. I guess it's just going to fit the wrapper div. So whatever is left over after the nav takes its 90 pixels, that's the size that that's going to be. All right. So if you want to make a 2-column page, this is a good starting point, though honestly what this is using is fairly primitive, but with what we know, this would work for you. Okay, so let's take a look at what else is in the CSS here. So we already talked about the wrapper, the idea of a wrapper, and it's just to give us this space around the page so it looks more modern. less cliche, which is important. If someone's first impression of a site is that it doesn't look well maintained, or it's not up to date with how other websites look, they're going to have a very negative first impression. I even do that. When I visit a page, immediately I judge how it's laid out, and I think, okay, you know, whoever did this didn't know what they were doing or didn't care. And so how much of that is also going to be expressed in the other parts of their business or organization. So first impressions are important. So nothing new in the header, nothing new here. We are setting H1s to have a margin of 0. I think they have some default top and bottom margin. So we did talk about previously using a CSS reset, if you remember that. They're kind of just doing it as they go there. But you can find one of these CSS reset set of CSS rules that'll basically remove all of the default space that elements have in each browser, so that you can control the page exactly how you want. All right, the nav over here, we did use float left, which we talked about last time. That's why it's on the left. And we don't have a clear on the main, so that is going to be, it's going to fit in wherever it can after the nav has taken up the space on the left. So for whatever reason, if we didn't want those to be on the same line, we could, remember, set clear here, and then the nav will take up this space, but apparently it's also taking up this left side, but then the main section will go below it. I don't know why you would want to do that. I think if we also set, let's see, we were talking about the overflow and I wasn't going to talk about it, but now we have an example. Okay, so if we set overflow to auto, now the background extends and the H2 displays after the image. So if we change that, and let's try it in the nav first. Okay, let's try it. Oh, I think we have to do it in the wrapper actually, maybe. Nope. Okay. Well, then I don't know why it's doing that. But you wouldn't get into this position because I don't know why you would do this. Okay. When you want to do something in CSS that you can't find a working example for, you will have to entrench yourself in a battle against CSS to get it to do what you want. And it really teaches you a lot about compromise. Okay, and it will also help you understand that reinventing the wheel can be a waste of time. So don't be afraid to use predefined CSS layouts. The skills that we have and that we learn about the layouts are to help you adjust existing layouts. At this point, it would be almost a waste of time. Unless you're doing something very specialized, it would be almost a waste of time to build your own layout for a normal page. Let me see if I can find... Now here's the thing about CSS. There are all of these tricks that you can do to make it do weird stuff. When you work on something and you have to use tricks to make it to work, you know it's tricky, right? Okay. I found a list of some awesome ones. All right, this is, I'm already over that page. All right, let's see, CSS Monopoly board. Here we go. This is the one that I saw. So someone created this Monopoly board. You know, it's just some divs. Okay. And then in the CSS, they set up, you know, where to place each div and to rotate the text. So you can select this text because this isn't an image. This is actually CSS elements with text. And there are images inside of them. Here's some diagonal text. Have fun selecting that. So I just thought this was really creative, and I can't imagine the nightmare that it was to create this using CSS. But this would be a cool, you could just copy this code. Let's see. Make sure when you do this stuff on something that someone obviously took a lot of time on, you know, it doesn't say anything. It does say here who made it. So I would just, you know, attribute what you're using to them. Okay. Obviously, this is the number one. He got 64,000 views on this. But he's got some really cool stuff that he built front end with CSS. You know what? I'm gonna take a look at this later. Maybe. I'll just stick it right here. There we go. And so what I'm trying to get across is we're learning the bare minimum so that we can manipulate CSS when we encounter it. And for those of you who are in the programming degree, this is, you know, it's going to be how you design your user interfaces involve CSS. And so you can do some really creative stuff. There is a lot of pre-built stuff. And if Joey, if you're still in here, you can probably you know, corroborate that. You know, web apps and websites, you'll notice that they have similarities in certain ways. It's because they're using very similar layouts or software that does that for them. But sometimes in certain situations you have to make little tweaks here and there. Okay. So that was all about just making a multi-column page. Oh, the thing I wanted to say, the last thing I wanted to say about that was, how did we get, we floated the nav left, and if you remember from the video before, the last live stream, I showed a video or a link to a video where a guy was explaining how floats work, and we had the 4 boxes, and when we floated one up, the other ones went under it. So how did we keep the main from going under there? And that is actually right here, margin left. So if I comment that out, a lot of weird stuff happens. Did I close my tags correctly? Yes. I wonder if I can't use this in here. Let me try just taking it out. Nope. Okay. So if we don't have this margin left 100, then the container for main is going to overlap with the nav that is being floated left. And so we can see that here. It's kind of hard to see the way it's going here, but we can see it here easier. If we go to elements, we want to see inside the body, inside the wrapper div, where the nav is. So it's still in the same place, floated left. But the main is now under it, or over it. I guess the background color of the nav is gone, but the elements are still there. And in the main, the image is still going to try to prevent overlap. And so if we change it back, we're telling it, okay, we set the nav to have a width of 90 pixels, and so it's going to take up 90 pixels here, and then we're giving margin left of 100 pixels to the main. Do you remember what that does? Where is margin in terms of the box model? And what are we telling the main element to do if we give it a margin left of 100 pixels? So we're actually telling it to add 100 pixels of space to the left, and so 90 of that is being used by the nav, and then 10 of it is being used here to add some contrast. So if we want that to be flush, we can change it to 90. Which, here's the, okay, so this always happens to me. I'm constantly trying to estimate what the CSS is going to do, but since there are so many variables involved, I guess I should stop trying to guess what it's going to do. Well, this isn't what we want though. There's a bunch of weird extra space here, and I think it's because the nav doesn't have enough space, and so it's doing something where they're overlapping, and it's causing the picture to go down below the image in the nav. So that's my best guess. All right. So columns. What about, do they have 3 columns in here, or is that in the next page, or in the next one? Yeah, that's in the next one. Okay. Which you'll be surprised at how similar it is. So let's just go through some of these here. So they're showing that you can use a list item or an unordered list structure to build a vertical menu here. And to do that, let's go ahead and just throw the one they have in here on our page. And I think I went through and fixed not all, but some of these double quotes to be the right ones, but I'm sure I missed some. So I'm copying this just because I know it's safe in here. And so in the nav, I want to put that unordered list. Okay. And maybe I don't want those bullets, and I don't want them to look like links anymore. I can remove list style. I can take list style type and set it to none. So this is telling CSS for unordered lists in the nav element, take off the bullets. Okay, and then here this is text decoration none. So it's saying anchor tags in a nav element, remove underlines. Underline is a text decoration. So I can use those. And now we have that. There's something adding that space there. Or, you know what, it's probably just because the page is too zoomed in. Nope, there's some kind of a space being added there. And so, instead of trying to guess what it is, I can open the inspector, and I want to take a look at that UL inside the nav. Alright, and it says, oh, there's some green space to the left, which is, I think that's in here. Padding. So the UL has a default padding of 40, and that's causing a problem here. So we can just go in and change that here. Instead of trying to guess and randomly change things until I get it to work, which unfortunately is still sometimes my go-to, and especially if you're new, you just want to try things until it works. It's better to learn the process of figuring out exactly what is wrong and then fixing it. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to think about that, and it's very frustrating sometimes. Okay, so right now we have a horizontal navigation here. What if we want to have a vertical navigation? So let's add another section right below the header, right here. So where the header ends, I'm going to add another section, and I'm going to call it top nav. Alright, and then in here, I'm going to put that unordered list in the top nav. And we'll give top nav a different color so we can see it. Top nac. Yellow. That's one that you can read easily with as a background. All right, and so that does that. And okay, now I have some space above here, and you know, this is probably not a space where I'm going to want a vertical menu. I would prefer a horizontal menu, and so to do that, we do the same thing. We can take away the bullets, we can take away the underlines. And then here, what do you think this is doing? Get out your magnifying glass and read that. So this is a CSS rule. What is it selecting? It's selecting any LIs that are inside of a nav element, and it's changing their display to inline. Okay, so what do you think their default display was? Remember, we have block and inline, and we can set it to none. Well, for changing it to inline, it was probably block, and we can see that actually here because each list item is on its own space, right? No, within the container, it isn't allowing anything to the right or left. Well, in a horizontal menu, we need things to be to the right and left, so we can just change it so that is an inline element, which allows things to the left and right. So we had the nav UL rule and the nav A rule to change the navigation over here, and so we can copy that again down here, and instead of using the nav, because that's this box, this area on the left, we created this area up here and named it top nav. We can use that as our selector. Instead of nav. So now we're saying unordered lists are going to have a padding of 0 and a list style type of none. That'll get rid of the bullets. And any anchor tags in the top nav will not have underlines. Okay, so there we go, we have that now. And so where do we need to change the display of the LI to inline? What would be a good selector for that? So think about how many list items do we have on the page. We have some in this nav area, we have some in this top nav area. The only ones we want to go horizontal are in the top nav. So we could put it in, well, we need a selector that's only going to select the list items inside the top nav. So we can create another rule for those. So inside the top navs, we want list items to have a display of inline. And now it wants to freeze. Alright, so it's hanging, so I'm going to copy my code. Oh, there it goes. Just had to be patient. And so now we have that. Alright. Doesn't look the best like that. But we can adjust it, so we could give the list items some margin left, and I guess we'll do 20. Actually, we have 4 items, so let me try this. I don't think this will work, but it'll be faster than looking up the right way to do it, which would be difficult to find because each case is going to be similar. But you could, if you Google CSS horizontal menu, you're going to find a really good example. Okay, so yeah, that wasn't what I wanted. Let's go 5. Okay, so we have 4 items. That means we have spaces between them. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. And so maybe, so we can't give them, if we did like 20%, it would do this. Okay, that's too big. Let's try 5%. All right, and let's do 5% here. So that doesn't look too bad, right? And it will, well, it looks fine in that, at that size, but if you do have a horizontal menu like this, it makes it much easier to use on a mobile device if you convert it to vertical. And so if we look at Lakeland site and ignore all the other things, here we have a bunch of horizontal menus, and if we shrink the page down, and you can do that also, you hit F12 again, there's another button right up here where you can set the device width. So I'm going to turn it to phone, so you can have page, phone, and you can adjust, here are some common phone sizes, so maybe I want to see it for an iPad, or I want to see it on a Pixel 2. Okay, and so then it also doesn't give you a cursor anymore. This is your finger that's floating around here, and you click on things. So they still have a kind of a horizontal menu here, but the big menu is now vertical. So we can scroll down through that. The links are still too small, so if you have large fingers, it's going to be hard to select the link you want, which in the next chapter we will go over how to properly design a web page for mobile. And remember, this isn't this book is an entry level or an introduction to HTML and CSS course. So this is what someone would learn if they had never seen this before. And in the book, chapter 7 is about how to properly make a mobile website. And it includes a lot of basic principles that anyone who uses HTML or CSS should know, right? And so anytime you see a situation where those principles are not being followed, you can assume that the person that made it has no idea what they're doing, or they don't care enough to make it right. And I'm open to other suggestions if you think it might be something else. But that's my impression usually. So when I see that, I know it was either thrown together as an afterthought, or they just don't care or they don't know. So take that. That's my 2 cents. All right. We got about 5 minutes. Wait, no, we have 15 minutes. 5 minutes or 15 minutes? We started at 9:30. Yeah, 15 minutes. Okay. Good, because I still have a lot to go through. All right, so some of you have been working with these pseudo classes. So what is a CSS pseudo class? All right. Well, I guess it probably has a definition in the book, but not in the slides. So you'll have to look at that, or you could Google it, or you can just look here at what it's doing, and then you'll know. So in this example, we have some CSS rules. All right, and remember before, when we first started learning about CSS, I broke it down into 3 pieces of the grammar for CSS, and that is selector, property, and value. Everything was just selectors, properties, and values. That isn't changing, but now we have additional selectors. And so these selectors are examples of pseudo classes, and what they allow you to do is, at least for hyperlinks, it allows you to change the CSS of hyperlinks in various states. So let's look at a hyperlink real quick. We got one right here. So, a hyperlink has various states. It can be, just the hyperlink that's displaying. When you click on it, it changes to a different color while it's being clicked, and after it's been clicked, it changes to a different color, so that we can know, okay, we visited this link before, or at least the browser thinks it has seen this page. We have not been to the menu link yet. So if I click that, it'll say that doesn't exist. But if we go back to the page, it'll stay blue because it never went to anything. Okay. But if I click on a link, and so I'm holding down my click here, notice that it's red. You may have never even noticed this before, because when you click a link, it isn't red very long and then it disappears. So, well, how can we change all of those different colors and states? We have to use pseudo classes. And so they are, well, for me, it helps me to understand a word or phrase if I understand the pieces of it. So pseudo, you can describe the word pseudo as either being fake or almost, or false, because if you're almost passing the class, you're not passing the class. If you are, that's what pseudo means. It's not real. So it's not a real class, and classes are how we define individual rules for, you know, whatever we want, any elements. So here, this selector means all anchor tags in the link state, so their default state of not being clicked and not being visited, will have text color here. So you can change the text color of an unclicked link. You can change the text color of a visited link. You can change the color of a link when someone has it selected by using the tab key. You can change the color of the link when someone is hovering over it with their cursor, and you can change the color of a link when it's being clicked. So let's try this out, and I'm gonna make a different one here, different replit. We'll just make a new one. So there's CSS rules in here, and we'll just put a hyperlink on the page. I like to use the click me example. Do you remember we talked about that in chapter 5? What did they say about using click here or click me as hyperlink text? Have these hyperlinks now. We set it to a dark bluish color. Remember, the first two are red, green, last two are blue, and so as we use a higher number, it's going to be brighter. As we use a lower number, it's going to be darker. You don't have to remember any of that for a quiz or test. I just like to mention it in case you want to know. So I can make it darker by lowering the number. That's not what I want. I want this. There we go. So now it's even darker, or we can make it lighter. Anyway, it's probably imperceptible on the screen here, but we can change it to whatever color we want. So apparently, you know, red and blue obviously is going to be purple, even when mixing light. Here, the visited color is, let's see, let's you visit it. So these have both been visited. I meant to put one in that wouldn't be visited, so let's do that. No one's been there. Okay, so these have been visited. I don't like that color. Let's go with this. What is that going to look like? All right, there we go. So you can see how those are different colors. What did they use? So the hover is using this color, and then the active is red here, because they just set it to red, but that's the same as it was before, so let's try something else. Five and D5. too similar to the purple. But anyway, you can see that it changes. Also, we have the focus color here is red. How do you get, what does focus mean? Right, because if I hover over them, they're not red. If I click it, it's not red. Apparently when I drag it and let go, it is red. Or if you hit tab on a web page, what it does is, what it does in a lot of programs on Windows, it just switches the focus of the computer to whatever the next item is. So if I have focus on click me and I hit tab, it's going to bring me to the next item. If I hit shift tab, it'll bring me to the previous item. And so if your mouse breaks and your touchpad breaks, you could still navigate the internet. It'll just be very frustrating. So no one, people don't usually use this that much. All right. So anyway, those are some pseudo classes that we'll use in the class to change hyperlinks. But let's also talk about this hover one again, because you can hover over anything on the page, right? Not just links. Now, most of the time you'll be hovering over links because you're going to click them, but what other things can we use that pseudo class on? Let's try an image. So let's grab some images here. Let's see, I have these two images that are similar, but they're of this weird guy. And they are named Choco Cut and Chocolate Josh Burner. Okay. I collect a lot of weird images after I got this computer before the either early in the semester or before, so I lost a lot of my random pictures from my old computer, but I just keep them in here to use as examples from wherever I got them. I couldn't even tell you where each one came from after a while, but let's put some images in here. Well, let's just put one image in there. And actually, you know what? I don't want to put an image. I want to put a div. That's what I want. All right. And we will make this div, well, all divs, but we want this one specifically to be, see how big these pictures are. Usually they tell you in here how big they are. Okay. Oh well, we'll just make it up. Height, 400 pixels. And we just won't worry about the, well, I think we do have to worry about the width in this case. Width of 200. Alright. Okay, so that's there. It's invisible, or it's white, but it's there. And we can use, remember, we can use CSS to add an image as a background. So that's background dash image. And remember, for the value on a background image, since we're accessing a file, we have to use a function here, URL, and then we can give it the path to the file. So we'll go chococut.jpg. And so now we can see that there. And remember why we were setting this up? It's so we could see these pseudo classes at work. So let's go use the pseudo class of hover. And then we'll just say, well, we'll use a different background image for this. And so now, when you hover over it, it changes the background image. And let's say we want to use active. I don't know if this will work or not on divs. And then we will set, we'll just say no background image. Might have to actually tell it. Just use none. This might not work here anyway. Yeah, it does. So now when we click on it, it disappears. Or, okay, so is this making sense with the pseudo classes? It allows you to affect different states that the element is in differently. We'll put, it doesn't really matter. We'll put a dancing pineapple when you click on it. How's that? So now you can switch between these, and then if you double click, it becomes a dancing pineapple. All right. So that's pseudo classes. I used it on a div. They've shown you an example of doing it with a hyperlink. You know, try it. It should work on any element that appears on the page that you can interact with. I don't think this link is a pseudo class you can use with other elements, because it just doesn't make sense to me anyway. I don't know when you would do that. So they have some examples here. Okay, we are out of time, but we already talked about positioning. I must have skipped ahead to that. I wonder if I'm looking at the wrong PowerPoints. That's probably what I'm doing. But we did manage to make it through chapter 6. None of the other stuff in there is super important. Yeah, I loaded my old one, but it's the same material, just in a different order, probably. Or maybe I did load the right one. Oh, here it is. This is the one we were looking at. This is probably the one you have access to. Okay. Okay, yep, we talked about pretty much everything we need for chapter 6. So I think the due dates are all messed up, because I think the next due date is like chapter 8 or something, but at this rate, I need to speed up, huh? We only have 1, 2, 3 more classes or weeks before finals week, so I guess I'll be doing 7, 8, and 9 in the coming weeks. And if you have any questions, you know how you can reach me. Other than that, I want you to have a good day, and I'll see you next week.